Folks, on behalf of Marquette Catholic High School, I want to welcome you to Marquette Catholic High School. I am the principal, Mike Slaughter, in the class of 1974. We want to welcome the Bensman family, and in a sense, we want to welcome home one of our alumni, Paul Bensman, from the class of 1939. This is a great thing that's going on today. It'll bring closure, I'm sure, to the family. And BentProp, what you are doing is wonderful. Saw you on 60 Minutes. Loved everything you guys are doing. But again, on behalf of the Bensman family, our condolences, but I'm glad we are bringing closure. With that, I'm going to introduce Mary Lee Bensman, a niece of Paul, and she's going to be the master of ceremonies. Mary Lee?
Okay, so I'm related to almost all of you. And this is so cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming. God has been in charge of this whole thing from day one, from the day BentProp decided to look for a plane, from the time we found out about it. God has been in charge of organizing this great reunion. There's been so many miracles happen, it's unbelievable. One of them is that today my sister Bonnie, she reads out of this Living Faith book every day, and I'm going to read what today's reading is. This is just one of the many miracles that has happened to bring us to today. Today is a special day. Today is a special day, even though it may be an ordinary day for most of us. What makes today so special, even if it isn't a birthday or anniversary, it is special in the entire history of the universe. There has never been another day just like today. In your own lifetime, too, there has never been a day like today either. What's more, there will never be another day exactly like today. Today is the day to which all your preceding days have been leading up to. And today is the day from which the rest of your life will flow. If you were aware of how precious this day is, you certainly would not waste it, nor would you be able to restrain your joy and gratitude.
Good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Today we are honoring one of America's fallen warriors, Paul Bensman. We also honor all veterans who answered the call to protect our country. We especially honor those heroes who have died protecting our freedom. Paul came from a family that provided two other brothers who fought in the war. And Paul was persistent in trying to get into the service. Because of a motorcycle accident, he had a very bad leg injury and was turned down by the Army. He was also turned down by the regular Navy. However, he finally was able and persisted to finally get into the Naval Air Corps, where he became a rear gunner. And Paul even flew several missions with a President, George W. Bush. Paul did his best to faithfully carry out his duties until the very end. Today we honor him and all veterans who have graduated from Marquette Catholic High School. We're going to honor him today with a flag presentation. Our prayer today is for Paul and all fallen veterans who have seen help during their time. Please bow your head. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are at my side. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Dear God, we ask that Paul and all of our fallen veterans find peaceful waters and green pastures to lie next to, where they find your loving arms, hold them close to your heart. Amen.
Amen.
Color guard. Standing right. Right shoulder on. At the half step. Forward. Mark. One, halt. Right face. Prepare to post. Post colors. Present arms. Order arms. Right shoulder arms. Left face. Forward march. One, halt, one.
If any veterans are here or current military, stay standing, and the rest of you can sit. Thank you. I also just want to acknowledge that two of Paul's sisters are here, and most of you are related to them, Dee and Eileen, but I just want to mention that they're here. And I also want to point out a special person, Jerry Ann, Paul's fiance, and he was killed, and his daughter Susie is here. So then I would like to introduce Pat Scannon and Derek from the BentProp Project.
It seems like a long time ago that Susan contacted me about if we might be having interest in looking for the plane that Paul Bensman was part of the aircrew, and the evolution of it to today. BentProp Project is a small group of volunteers whose mission is to discover and ultimately return home MIAs from World War II. We have tended to focus and allow for two reasons. We're a small group, but secondly because there are a lot of Americans who remain missing in that small part of the Pacific Ocean. And we've dedicated the last 22 years to that mission. And we're now actually thinking about expanding beyond the islands of Palau, but virtually all of our work has been in this area. And Derek is a team member. Derek just retired as a major in the United States Marine Corps. But not all of us are military. About half the team are civilians who are equally taken by the gratitude they want to express to Americans who've lost their lives in defense of our country, but also to the families, because we recognize that there is a forever consequence of an MIA's family and the impact that it has upon that family. So for us to be here today to share with you what we do and what little role we played in today is very special to us. And I assure you, I've been in contact with all of our team members. They are here in spirit to be with you. And I will also say this is the biggest group of people we have ever had. When Mary Lee, through Susan, contacted me, I thought for sure what was going to happen was we'd have a flag, we would, if she wanted it delivered, we would deliver it, and there'd be 3 or 4 people. Well, she's right. There are 3 or 4 people, but there's a lot more. And I think one of the things that we found when we return flags to the family is that the family never forgets. I mean, there's one thing about the tragedy of a person being killed in combat and returned home. There is a sense of closure, you know where the remains lie, and that has a certain sense of finality. With an MIA, you never know. And there really are people who could believe, even now, 70 years later, that maybe they escaped and always got amnesia. They have to have amnesia and somehow survive. And so the fact of trying to bring information of what happened, where it happened, and what we found is what we feel is what we can contribute in terms of expressing our gratitude, in this case to the Bensman family. And the other part of this is that we're finding out today that it's not just about the family, it's about the community. And we're really struck by the number of people that come on a Saturday and share this experience with us. What we would like to do, I've asked Derek to describe the context of the battle where the Bensman crew was lost, and then I'll talk a little bit about what our process was, and I will be quite brief, but I think it's important to have a historical context.
So by September of 1944, Palau had been experiencing months of combat, mostly aviation attacks from Army Air Corps, the Navy, a little bit of the Marine Corps, but they hadn't been experiencing the whole war like the rest of the world. It had only been a few months. And September 15th was the significant day. I saw a few Marines in the crowd. September 15th was the day that the Marines landed on the island of Peleliu, which is one of the islands of Palau, and it had about 10 to 11,000 Japanese on it. Paul and his crew were supporting those missions, and ultimately, because those missions were taking place that day, the BentProp Project was able to locate this crash site. There was filming taking place in the air, and those films and those pictures were the clue that led us to the discovery. It was a hot day. It's a coral island, so there's no way of digging in on the island. And the Marines were moving their way ashore when Paul and the rest of this crew of this Avenger met their fate. Very soon thereafter, the Marines took that island across that airfield through some very, very vicious fighting, some of the worst in World War II. Many lives were lost, but ultimately, for the reason of all of us being able to continue our life the way we are today. So their sacrifice meant something. Names like Peleliu and Palau are often lost on American society, but names like Paul will be remembered forever in how we live our life.
in the process over the last 22 years in terms of how we go about finding MIA sites, we do a lot of background searching, and there are several archival places we can look. There's the National Archives and Records Administration in Maryland. There's the Air Force Historical Research Agency. There's the Navy Heritage and Historical Center in Washington, D.C., and so on. There's also a Marine Center in Quantico, Virginia. And we look at all of those. We also, while we have been able to, over the last 20 years, interview a lot of veterans from World War II, many of those veterans have now passed away. And over this time, we've accumulated in Palau, and actually in a number of other places around the world, records of Americans missing in action. In the case, we knew about this aircraft many years ago, and we knew that there were 2 Avenger crashes on the island of Peleliu. One of them we found, I think, in 2003, and we proceeded to determine, first thing was, number 1, was it an Avenger, and then number 2, was it 1 Avenger or 2, because the debris fields could overlap. In that case, it was very clear that was a single debris field, so that left open the question of what happened to this crew and their airplane. It was through our archival searches that we found this incredible 3-second strip of film that was incidentally captured while an airplane, as Derek said, was flying over the battlefield, capturing from the air the ongoing battle, when all of a sudden you see a bright light and then you see a stream of flames going very vertical and crashing in the jungle on the east side of the island. From that, we were able to determine by taking a single frame where the greatest probability of this crash was, and ultimately we were able to find the crash site, and it would have been exactly as what you would expect it really was in a very single localized area. What we do as a private group is we then contact the Department of Defense, and there is an agency within the Department of Defense located in Hawaii at Hickam Field, and it's called the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. And we notified them that we had found the debris field. We were quite certain of whose aircraft it was, and because of the chain of custody that's involved in terms of discovering and returning remains, just like in a forensic case, we hand the case over to them. In 2009, we found this in 2006. In 2009, they did a recovery mission, found the debris field as we described it, but unfortunately they could not find remains at the site. They did find the dog tag of Paul Bensman in the debris field. And that absolutely determined that this was, in fact, the aircraft, the Avenger, flown by Lieutenant Junior Dre Waters, and in which Paul Bensman was one of the aircrew. The fact that they found no remains does not mean there are no remains. All it means is that it wasn't in the immediate debris field, and there are several reasons why the remains might not be found, and for that reason, this case is still an open case. There may be several reasons in the future why either technology or new findings could help us lead to this, and I assure you that on our part, on the part of the BentProp Project, we have not put this case down. But today, we are having a symbolic gathering because at the time, and this picture is taken at the crash site, in front of the propeller of the Avenger. We held a ceremony, and we held 3 American flags, one for each airman. We had a ceremony. We read the names of the aircrew. Then we folded each flag. In the picture, you will see the 3 American flags and the Palauan flag, and that is symbolic of the fact that both Americans and the people of Palau are interested in this and have worked hard with us to help us make these discoveries. The Palauan people, in fact, are very proud to be associated with the United States of America because in their minds, and I'm really paraphrasing at least 2 presidents that we have known from the Republic of Palau, that they would not be there, they would not have their government, their democratic government, had we not ultimately freed the islands of Palau from the enemy and allowed them to go on to become a freestanding nation, and they now have their own seat in the United Nations. The fact that the flags are open means that it's that to us it means it's symbolic of the fact that this crew gave its life, their lives for our country. And when we fold the flag, that's symbolic of the fact that we're now hopefully starting the journey home. One of those flags is here. Because I was the sole member of military on the team at the time, I took charge of the flags, and Derek has flags for Marines. We have some Navy flags that are in the hands of some of our Navy team members. But I took control of this flag, and in 2006 I stored it. It's never been opened. I FedExed it to Mary Lee just to make sure that it got here in case I didn't get here. And so they opened the flag. So it's the first time this flag's been opened since it was at the crash site. And so this is part of the journey home. And we hope that in the future we'll learn more about this aircrew, and on our part we will not stop in terms of trying to finally answer all the questions in regards to this aircrew. So. after in our ceremony we hold the flag, we read a poem written by Lawrence Binion. This is a poet that wrote the following stanzas, and we read this every time we have one of our ceremonies.
For the fallen. They went with the songs to the battle, they were young. Straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds unaccounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Pat mentioned that during the archaeological dig, they found Paul's dog tag, one of them. As you guys all know, they get out two. There's a picture we knew about this when Pat sent us, the more detailed reports. And I want to tell you that my sister Bonnie, my cousin Sandy, and then Susan, Jerry's daughter Susan, we're the ones who have been in contact with Pat and did all the correspondence and planning this. So I just want to make sure that they're recognized for having a hand in all of this. So we knew that there was a dog tag. Well, that alerted me to try to find it, hunt it down. And I don't even know how it happened, but I was put in touch with the person who knows the people who, and about 2 weeks ago, I asked this guy, Bill Spafford, I said, is there any way you think we can get that dog tag returned to our family before this day, for this day? And he said, well, let me see. And then, like a couple of days later, he said, I've got the tag. It was in Hawaii, in some facility where they keep those kind of things. He said, I've got it. Where do you want me to send it? Well, I went ahead and eventually had it sent, FedExed, to my sister Nancy, because she lives here. And Bonnie and Sandy and I flew in from Colorado on the same plane on Wednesday. We came together. My niece Debbie picked us up, took us to Nancy's house, and I walked in the door and I found a FedEx package, and I was shaking so bad. And so we went out on the porch, Nancy's porch, and I'm sitting there, on the porch, and Sandy and Bonnie, and I'm saying, this is it. And they're saying, open it! And I said, okay, and Pat, I had told Pat that we had gotten it, and he said, I'm amazed that you were able to get through the red tape and have that here. And so when I open it, sure enough, there's red tape on it. And Sandy and I tried it, and we could not get that red tape off of there. So Debbie went in the house thinking she got a sharp knife, zipped it open. So we're sitting there on the porch of my sister's house and shaking like I'm shaking right now because all I wanted to do was touch it. I wanted to touch it. It's as much as Paul that we have. And so I opened it up. and held it, you know, it's like, oh my God. And then pass it around, and we said a prayer. I don't even remember what we prayed. Maybe gratitude. I'm pretty sure it was a prayer of gratitude. And then I'm saying, you know, this whole thing has been overwhelming. It's like, you know, those of you who know me, my dad and I put the family picture together. Once that was done, it was done. And I had no idea that something else would come up. And I'm sitting there saying, I don't even know what this means. And Debbie, in her wisdom, said, it means welcome home. The fact that this has wire on it, and that it's by itself, my understanding is that that meant that Paul, when he got into the plane, he tied this one onto something in the plane, which is why they found it. I totally expect that at some point it's quite possible that the other one that was probably around his neck very well may show up. But we don't have that now, but we do have this tag. I'm going to set this over on the table in front of Paul. If you guys, especially, you know, people who knew him and, you know, he's our uncle or our brother, I've already, you know, shown it to Eileen and Dee. If you want to touch it, feel free, because I just, when I thought back on it, it was just like this was a sacred moment. It was holy. And you guys are welcome to touch it, because I needed to touch it. And so I'm going to put it over there, and after we're done, please feel free to do that if you want. And then just leave it there, don't take it out of the room, of course, or I'll have dog tag police after you. But it'll be sitting over there. Paul, and I call them the boys, you know, the three oldest. My dad was Walter, and then there was Gene, and then Paul were the three oldest. He was a prolific letter writer, as was my dad. Grandma saved every letter of all of them. Gene didn't write too much, but she saved his letters. And being in, you know, doing all the family history, my dad begged, borrowed, and I don't want to use the word stole, pictures, stories from everybody, every family member he could before he died. And then he passed all of that stuff on to me, which I used to compile the book. You know, Dad did most of the research, you know, Jerry and Joe's dad, James and Louise, they went to reunions of the USS San Jacinto. Their dad, Uncle Jake's, Gerald, actually met the relatives of the pilot and the radio man at these reunions. We've got a picture somewhere in one of those books of the three brothers of the men who were killed. So it was Jake's and the brother of Waters and Hyman Tunn's brother. They met at these reunions. I'm sure they also met Bush. Anyway, the letters I had a box of letters. So I made a copy of all of them, and that's what that big book is. I made a copy, and then I handed those out to different members of my aunts and uncles, because it wasn't my place to keep those. So I distributed them. But I found one that you don't have, because this is the original. And Eileen was 7, you know, he always talked about her when he wrote. Paul always asked about the family, the kiddos. He'd ask how the baby's doing. So she, wasn't writing letters, but Paul answered letters. If you wrote him, he answered. Jerry Ann wrote him every day. He said that. He said that in one of his letters. He said, Ann writes me every day. And I know he wrote her back, and I know she has, to this day, some of his letters. But I just want to give this one to you. It's very good. He wrote it, the date on here is September 11th, 1944. That's the postmark. Do you want me to read it? He wrote that, so September 11th was 4 days before he died. In a lot of his letters, he talked about eating. There's one where he said, well, I needed some new clothes, so I got 2 pairs of dungarees, if you remember what dungarees are, a belt, some new socks, some underwear. He's writing this to his mom. And he said, it cost me $9. So I'll read this. Hello, Dolores. And you were 14, right? 13. Okay. Had to get up at 3 o'clock this morning, and that's ruined my whole day. I'll never get used to rolling out in the morning, and when I have to get up like this morning, it puts me in a very bad mood. I'm kind of tired, but it seems quite some time since I've answered any of your letters. Obviously, you were writing him. So I figured I'd better be dropping you a few lines. We've got a recording machine here in the ready room that we worked over and made a record player and managed to get a few fairly good recordings, so we have a little music to pass the time away. But one of the hillbillies we have in our outfit managed to get a hold of some cowboy records. My dad would have loved that, wouldn't he? And he's back playing them now. Don't you wish you could hear it too? I'm going to throw a shoe at him if he doesn't stop singing. From your letter, it sounds as if you've had a busy summer and you're a regular little working girl. Glad you like it. Oh, the carnival you told me about. Sounded like a lot of fun, and I was glad to hear you make it to camp again this year and got to do a little swimming. If it's warm when I get home again, we'll have to go for a swim and see how you're doing. Do you and Dot go down to the WWII and practice anymore? You'd have died laughing if you could have seen me this afternoon when I tried on a pair of coveralls. We were supposed to get new flight suits, but they didn't show up, so they issued us some coveralls. And by the time I got mine, all they had left were large. The fellow told me I could cut them down so I'd fit, so I took them, and when I tried them on, I found out I could cut them in half, and it'd still be too big. Everyone about had fits when I put them on. I could take 3 steps in any direction without the coveralls ever moving. The seat came way down below my knees, and you could hardly find me in them. They must have been size 50 or so. I gave them back. Tell Uncle Joe and everyone down at Aunt Mary's and Uncle Mike's I said hello, and haven't forgotten them, even though I don't write. Where is Aunt Ann working now, and how is she getting along? Time to hit the hay now, sis. So I'll say goodnight and be seeing you. You making eyes at any of the boys yet? He wrote that September 1st, 1944. Thanks for letting me read that.
I just wanted to actually share something about this crash site, since I actually tell this story a lot when I present about BentProp, and since it's this site, I probably should actually share some of this, especially since you mentioned eating. So we develop relationships, or whatever you want to call them, with the people that we're looking for, and then there's certain things at certain sites that trigger you or connect you to those sites, and I don't know any other way to explain it. We're called the BentProp Project, so when we find an aircraft site, the prop is typically bent, and that's the origin of our name. And people say, "Oh, you're looking for aircraft," but we all know that we're not looking for aircraft. We're looking for people. The aircraft just lead us there. So there's some things that trigger me, like blue paint. Usually, and you see in the picture, there's not a lot of blue paint. The weather and the elements have made the paint go away, but every once in a while you'll find a piece of aluminum and you'll flip it over and you'll see the blue paint, and you know that that's American. And so the paint usually means something. But one thing unique about this site, we didn't see the dog tags, but one thing that we did see in the wreckage was a spoon. And it was a single teaspoon, and on the handle it had the letters USN carved into it, U.S. Navy. For me, being a Marine, I used to keep a spoon in my pocket for when I was in the field and I had a chance to eat, whenever it was, throw it back because I wanted to know where it was, and it needed to be handy. And I don't know whose spoon it was, but I always think about that spoon, and it brings the whole thing back home. And I don't know if it was Paul's.
Well, the funny thing is, the report says it was liberated from the ship. So I don't think any of the families want to play that.
Then you might come looking for a fee and hopefully. That's a valuable item when it's time to eat. You usually don't get a lot of time, and you want to take advantage of it. So I just wanted to share that. I actually shared this story last week at a presentation, and I got a little nervous and forgot to bring it up when I was up here the first time, but I couldn't leave without sharing. Thank you.
I don't want to hog this show, but these guys don't want to do this. So we want to open this up for a little bit, for if anybody has, there's very few people here who have actual memories of Paul, but they have stories and feelings, maybe feelings about what's happening here. We want to give you a chance to say that. So to break the ice, I'm just going to read this. This was written by my dad, Walter. So he wrote this for Shoots for Lose. I interviewed him, I asked him to tell me something about Paul. And this is what he wrote. So as I read this, a lot of people say I look like my dad, I talk like my dad, walk like my dad. So this is my dad, read me dad. Paul was our hard luck brother. He was the friendliest of us all, the best liked, very outgoing, always smiling. Everybody liked Paul. When we kids were in grade school, we were on a corner lot with a path going through. Everybody cut across there. We were playing marbles down there. We had a ring and we were shooting marbles. A dog came through and bit Paul. We followed the dog and found out who the dog belonged to. They took Paul to the doctor, and then Dad went up to see the dog's owners to see if it had rabies or not. As I understand it, at that time they had to kill the dog and send the dog's head off to Springfield, where it was tested for rabies. It turned out it did have rabies. So then Paul had to have 21 shots in his stomach. Another thing that happened to him was he had gone out for some football and was horsing around, wrestling with someone in a locker room, got thrown up against the locker and a couple of teeth knocked out. We used to roller skate a lot in high school, and I had a friend by the name of Francis Hogan. He had a motorcycle. He and I had gone down to Wood River to roller skate, and Paul was down there and wanted to ride home. I had come early for some reason, but Paul came home with Francis on a motorcycle and was riding back. They were coming up over Brown Street. There was a car coming toward them, and the driver thought the motorcycle with one light on it was a car in his section of the road. So he moved over, he hit the motorcycle head on. Paul was hurt pretty bad in his leg, and that's, we heard that story. His leg was so chewed up after it healed that he was having trouble getting into the service, and we mentioned that. And so this spring, which was 1989, Gerald and Louise, so Jake's, Jake's and Louise called. They had gotten, and they're the ones who attended those reunions with the San Jacinto. They sent us a booklet that Bush had prepared listing all of his service on the San Jacinto. And Paul, it says that Paul was on 3 of those flights. Paul was killed on the island of Peleliu, I haven't spelled it. He was shot down in 1944. I was in New Caledonia at the time and had never seen any combat, but I can remember how upset I got when I heard about that. I tried to get a transfer off the island to go someplace where I could fight. I was really upset. Of course, I never made it. That's how my dad said that. For those of you who knew Aunt Oni, Aunt Oni had something to say. Paul was short and just grinned all the time. He was full-faced and chubby. Paul was crazy about his Aunt Florence. When he come home on leave, he'd head down to East Alton. Florence and Harvey lived down there, and Aunt Florence had to make him fudge. Nobody could make fudge like Aunt Florence. And then according to Jason and Louise, Paul was the chess champion of his ship, of the San Jacinto. He was in the middle of a chess game when he left on his last flight. He said, "Don't any of you touch this, I'll be back." And it turns out that one of the other 2 men was playing chess at that same time and said a similar thing. Don't touch this. So, do you want to say something? Or, Susan's going to say something. She mentioned, she remembered Paul laying on the couch after his accident, motorcycle accident, for like 6 months, couching, recovering from that. Oh, I was going to point at somebody. Who was that? I told that to a couple of people. There was somebody who remembered when Grandpa got the news. No, it was a guy. It was Bill Mayhew. Bob Mayhew. Where's Bob?
Bob's right there. What do you want?
Do you want to tell them what you remembered about when Grandpa got?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, then just be sure.
My name's Bob Mayer, related down the line to the Bensman family. My grandmother was Bensman. My mother was cousins to the whole Bensman family. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
I was 7 years old when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Vividly remember it coming over the radio. One uncle, George Coates, also related to the Bensmans. said, this means war, which it did. And Korea's worst wars in our history. Back then, I was 7 years old then, and in 1944, when Uncle Bill got the letter from the War Department about Paul losing his life, he got a letter, and everybody was at Uncle Bill's house that evening. And I would like a family get together, like it was normal in days to get together and have a family affair. Just one of the things that was part of life. Well, Uncle Bill come out on the front porch. There was my dad and Uncle Joe. I know you guys all remember Uncle Joe. Yeah, what a sweetheart. Uncle Bill brought the letter out from the War Department. It's the first time in my life I've ever seen a grown man cry. And everybody around him was crying. I was 10 and oh man, never forgot it. I'll probably never forget it as long as I live, which might not be too much longer, but who knows? Nobody knows. But my heart goes out to the Bensman family. I'm proud to be a part of it. And God bless Paul, his family, and God bless America.
Anybody else?
Nobody, okay, anybody can go before me that wants to.
You go ahead and ready to go last if there's something special. Anybody else?
I'm the boo-hooer in the bunch. I think I've been through about a dozen of these already today. I'm Susan. My mom is Jerry. My mom and Paul dated for about 4 years before Paul died. And Mary Lee asked me to talk a little bit about that, about them, and what I know. I can tell you that there was never a time that I didn't know about Paul. And I really don't expect a phone call. I've got my notes here, by the way. Mom had this little jewelry box, and I would sit on her bed when I was a little girl and go through it, and tell me about this, tell me about that. And there wasn't much in it, but it was always stuff from Paul. And those things are out on the end of the table now. Mom knew Paul when she was a young girl. Paul and my Uncle Gus went to school together and they were friends. But I don't think that Paul paid any attention to Mom because she was just a kid's sister then. But in October 1940, louder. In October of 1940, Mom went to work at Western Cartridge. And she was assigned to this machine that she had to operate, and Paul was the guy that maintained that machine. Now that machine broke down a lot, and we weren't sure really why it broke down so much. Mom may have had something to do with that, but it wasn't too long and Paul asked her out and she said yes. So, oh no, my screen went dark. Excuse me while I scan my fingerprint and try and get it up again. Okay. So they started going out, and they seemed to have a lot of fun and laughter in their lives from the stories I've heard. They were members of each other's families. Mom came from a big family, Paul was from a big family, and they just kind of fit in with each other real well. Mom said that the Bensmans were always really good to her, and she remained friends with Paul's mother throughout Paul's mother's life. Mrs. Bensman came to my parents' wedding and reception. And Donald, one of Paul's younger brothers, the youngest of the boys, used to bring Mrs. Benson out to buy eggs and my mother out on the farm. So anyway, back to Paul and Mom. She's got on a strand of pearls today that I'm going to tell a little story to go with. There was a hotel apparently up in Grafton, and they had a jukebox there. And Paul and Mom liked to dance, and so Paul took Mom up there and put his money in the jukebox. And when the song String of Pearls came on, he pulled out a box of pearls and gave Mom a strand of pearls, and she's wearing them today. He was always full of surprises, even if the surprise was just him sneaking home and her not knowing he was going to be home and coming up behind her on the street downtown Alton. So they had a lot of fun together. And there's a lot of other stories. And there's a small book of letters on the table. I didn't put all the letters out, but Mary Lee thought it would be interesting if you wanted to see letters that had been sent to her. And when you look at the little letters in the notebook on the far end there, you'll find that little chunks are cut out of those letters. And I wasn't going to say anything about this part, but Mary Lee mentioned the postmark on the letter to Dee. One of those letters in there, if you look at the envelope, the postmark is September 16th, the day after Paul was killed. So it right into September. As I was going through my mom's stuff this last winter, we moved her from her home of 65 years recently, I found this up in the top of her closet. And I opened it. It said it was from P. Bensman to Miss Jerry Campagna. And there was a record inside. And it was completely, totally gray with mildew. You couldn't see the lines in this record. There's still a little bit of stuff on the edges. And I wasn't sure what it was. And then I didn't mention it to Mom, but out of the blue, I had Mom's letters, and she said, you know, I had a record from Paul. And I said, yeah, I found it. It's covered in mildew. And she was telling me what was on it. One side was to his parents, his family, and the other side was to her. And she said, you know, he's saying you are my sunshine to me on that record. And I thought, I've got to get this record to where it can be played. I took it to a specialty place in Kansas City where I live, and they were able to clean this record up. And what you're going to hear in a little bit behind a slideshow is this record. And this is going to be the first time in over 70 years that people in this room that knew Paul have heard his voice. And it's going to be the first time that most of us have ever heard his voice. You're going to hear both sides of the record, the side to his family, and you're going to hear the side to my mother, too. So, pull out your Kleenex. If you're anything like me, you'll need them.
We're ready for this slideshow, and I want to, my great niece, Ashley, she is now, she's one of Nancy's great granddaughters. She works in LA at a film editing, We sent her photographs like that. Susan was sending us photos. She said, oh my gosh, I found this, I found that. She'd send us photographs. We sent her some things. When she got the digital recording of the record, she sent me that. I gave all that stuff to Ashley in LA. She set me up with Dropbox. And Ashley edited this slideshow that you're going to see. I just wanted to give her that credit.
Mary Lee, turn the lights on. Hello, Mom and Pop and Ann and all the kiddos. How are you? Such a surprise to hear me. Hope I don't sound as scared as Gene did on his, because I'm really not. I'm still an OGU, the outgoing unit waiting for my aviation argument school, but I got good news today. I'll leave tomorrow, but don't know where I'll go. I always tell you here is the fact that you're ready to leave. How's Jake's making? Still tormenting the girls all the time? I'm Butch, Eileen. How are you? You too, Doc and Doris. I'm here's wishing everybody and all our relatives a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. I probably won't get another chance to tell you in person. I sure miss all of you. Goodbye now. I gotta go. The thing's about going out on this time. I'll be seeing you soon, I hope. Hi, honey. Bet you never thought you'd ever hear me from my sweet little boy Sylvia Petro, did you? How's it sound? Lousy, I guess. All the rest of the boys here have been singing songs, but I don't think I'll take a chance on that. I hate to break the nice Nickelodeon. Started to write some letters tonight, but besides smoking canteen before I finished it, give me a piece of pie and some ice cream. Sure glad I did, because I run into this nice man over here. You let me make this pretty speech to you. I'm running out of words to say here, huh? Oh no, I want to say hello to you sing your song. I might sing You're My Sunshine for you. Would you like that? You're my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Oh dear, how much I love you. Oh please don't take my sunshine away. No one used to sing that to me. Oh well, we gotta go now, man. So I'll be seeing you. Lots of love. Shouldn't miss you. Wish you were here.
Hello, I'm Jim Ryan. I'm the first ward alderman, and I'm also the mayor pro tem. And I'm here to read a proclamation. Also, this has been one of the most incredible afternoons that I have ever spent. This has just been absolutely wonderful. Proclamation. Whereas Paul Philip Bensman was born in Alton, Illinois on October 20th, 1919. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman attended St. Patrick's Elementary School and Marquette High School, where he graduated in 1939. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman lived the entire 24 years of his life in Alton, Illinois, except for his service time in the military. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman served in the United States Naval Reserve as an aviation ordnance man second class, torpedo squadron BT-51, and flying from the USS San Jacinto on the TBM IC Avenger. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman served alongside President George H.W. Bush on the USS San Jacinto and flew 3 missions on which President Bush served as pilot. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman made the ultimate sacrifice for his country when his plane was shot down on September 15, 1944. And whereas at the time of his death, Paul Philip Bensman was survived by his parents, Walter, Bill, and Edna Bensman, as well as 8 siblings, Walter, Eugene, Roberta, Gerald, Dolores, Dorothy, Donald, and Eileen. And whereas Paul Philip Bensman's plane was found on February 25, 2006. Now, therefore, I, Brent Walker, Mayor of the City of Alton, Illinois, do hereby proclaim Saturday, May 16, 2015, as Paul Philip Bensman Day in the City of Alton, Illinois, in recognition of his military service and the ultimate sacrifice he paid in the protection of our nation. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand, caused the great seal of the City of Alton, Illinois to be affixed on this 8th day of May, 2015. Brent Walker, Mayor, and Mary Gould, City Clerk.